The following is a review for critical, analytical, and educational purposes only, and is protected under Article 17 and 107 in the United States Fair Use Code. This video is not an infringement on copyright. Please enjoy the video.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Trilbee, and welcome to my Avengers Marathon. As part of this marathon, I'll be taking a look at 5 of the most ambitious and noteworthy comic book movies in recent memory, all of them created under the Marvel Studios banner, and all of them culminating in the epic crossover blockbuster event, The Avengers, or Marvel's Avengers Assemble as it was known in the UK. But first things first, a quick history lesson. In 1978, Richard Donner created the first Superman movie, inspired by the huge boom in the fantasy genre in the wake of Star Wars. Over the next decade and a half, superhero movies were some of the most popular pieces of media in the entertainment industry. Superman sequels, 2 Tim Burton Batman movies, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Dick Tracy, The Crow, The Punisher, and many more followed. Then the mid-90s happened, and superhero movies started to lose audience goodwill as they hit rock bottom in terms of quality. Flops like The Phantom, Steel, Captain America, Fantastic Four, the latter 2 not even getting a theatrical release, all culminating in Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin in 1997, and many considered the superhero subgenre to be dead. You couldn't get any worse than that, at least that was the audience perception. So after a brief silence, Blade was released, which sparked audience interest in comic book movies before Bryan Singer's X-Men and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man blew the doors open for a new resurgence in superhero comic book films. Old favourites such as Superman, Batman and The Punisher returned, whilst new heroes joined the revolution thanks to the advent of CGI and improved technology, like Hellboy, Ghost Rider and the Fantastic Four. Well, for real this time. Kind of. 2008 is considered to be the year where superhero movies reached their peak and evolved even further, with releases such as Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, The Dark Knight, Iron Man, and The Incredible Hulk. In my opinion, those 4 films are some of the best comic book movies ever made, but for the purposes of this marathon, we'll only be talking about the latter 2. But how did Marvel Studios even come about? Well, in the 1990s, it didn't just suck for comic book movies. It sucked for comic books. During the 1990s, there was something akin to a crash in the comic book industry, with Marvel also filing for bankruptcy in the face of deteriorating sales and low-quality books. To try and keep their heads above water financially, they sold the movie rights to film distributors, with Spider-Man and Ghost Rider going to Sony, X-Men, Fantastic Four and Daredevil going to 20th Century Fox, The Hulk going to Universal, Punisher going to Lionsgate, etc. So in 2004, comic book movies were becoming the biggest thing on the planet, so Marvel decided to open up their own movie studio with the few characters and rights that they had left. This presented a unique dilemma, as in the mid-2000s, due to the ubiquity of the movies, their biggest and most successful comic book franchises such as Spider-Man, Wolverine and the X-Men didn't belong to them in terms of movie rights, and they were only popular because they had those movies, so they had to make 2nd or 3rd tier Marvel characters headline their own films, such as Iron Man, Captain America and Thor. The Hulk was probably the most well-known franchise they attained the rights to after Ang Lee's Hulk didn't do too well for Universal in 2003. The first character they made a movie for under the Marvel Studios umbrella was Iron Man, who they reacquired the rights from New Line Cinema, who had been trying to get a movie off the ground, directed by, wait for it, Joss Whedon. God, and I thought comic books had their own messed up internal continuity, but little did we know that 2008's Iron Man was the start of something great, just a taste of things to come, and now we're 7 years and about a dozen films into this massive saga, with still more movies yet to come over the coming years. But let's talk about where it all began, Iron Man. Let's talk about the history of the production. The comic book character of the same name was created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, Don Peck, and Jack Kirby in 1963. Stan Lee wanted to create a superhero who was a businessman dealing in weapons. He made his first appearance in an 18-page story in the Tales of Suspense issue 39. Also in 1963, Iron Man was one of the founding members of the Avengers, which brought together some of Marvel's most popular characters for a superhero team-up title. The character, along with his endless supply of mechanical suits, evolved and changed over the years until he finally got his own independent series, The Invincible Iron Man, in May 1968, with Iron Man comics still being published to this very day. As for this movie adaptation, it started in 1990, with Universal Studios acquiring the rights to the character, with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids director Stuart Gordon to helm it. An interesting choice. Then in 1996, 20th Century Fox acquired the rights, with Nicolas Cage and Tom Cruise interested in portraying Tony Stark, along with Quentin Tarantino being in talks to direct. However, that never transpired, and New Line Cinema acquired the rights and tried to get Joss Whedon on board to direct before replacing him with the Notebook director Nick Cassavetes, I think that's how it's pronounced, for a 2006 release. But in 2005, the project wasn't gaining any sort of momentum, so Marvel acquired the rights before starting completely from scratch. Blimey, that's a delayed production, 15 years and no progress. So the movie that finally did get made was released in the UK and in the US on May 2nd, 2008, was distributed by Paramount Pictures and developed by Marvel Studios and Fairview Entertainment, which is Jon Favreau's production company, which is appropriate because he was attached to direct, with a screenplay written by Mark Fergus, Hawk Ostby, Art Markham and Matt Holloway, and produced by Kevin Feige and Avi Arad. The movie stars Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Jeff Bridges and Terrence Howard, with music by Ramin Djawadi and edited by Dan Lebentel and Glenn Scantlebury. It has a running time of 126 minutes, is rated 12A, and has a production budget of $140 million, and it became an unprecedented success, exceeding all expectations by grossing $585 million. Interestingly enough, Marvel Studios thought that 2008's The Incredible Hulk would be a much bigger and more successful movie than Iron Man. Incredible Hulk had the bigger budget, it had more Avengers tie-ins than Iron Man did, and that's why Iron Man 2 was rushed into production. They weren't expecting Iron Man to be such a big hit in comparison to The Incredible Hulk, and it's why the Hulk movie doesn't have nearly as many mentions in future Marvel movies. The movie even had some awards recognition, with it being nominated for Best Visual Effects and Best Sound Editing at the 81st Academy Awards, though it lost to The Curious Case of Benjamin Button and The Dark Knight respectively. Not bad for a comic book origin story about a B-list character, at least at the time. Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr., is the head of a weapons manufacturer called Stark Industries, but when demonstrating his brand new missile in the Middle East, his military escort is ambushed by terrorists, and in the attack he is left with shrapnel in his chest that is getting closer to his heart every second, as he is held hostage by the Ten Rings organization, who want him to build them more missiles. With the help of fellow captive Yinsen, played by Sean Toob, Stark builds an arc reactor in his chest to prevent the shrapnel from reaching his heart, as well as a suit of armor to engineer his escape and destroy the weapons that had fallen into enemy hands, though Yinsen is killed during the escape. When Tony is rescued and brought back to America, he shuts down the weapons division of his company until he decides what is best for him and the world. This angers his deceased father's old business partner Obadiah Stane, played by Jeff Bridges, who decides that it's time for Tony to step down so he can become the head of Stark Industries and gain control of his own metal suit. Throw in a love interest, Pepper Potts, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, a concerned best friend, James Rose, played by Terrence Howard, and the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division working behind the scenes, and you're left with a film that has a lot going on. Initially, it seems like there's way too much going on in this 2-hour movie. However, the individual elements are so well implemented and executed that it never feels convoluted or confusing. Don't be fooled by the 12A certificate. This is not a movie that kids are going to fully understand. Yes, they might get the broad strokes, but this is a superhero movie about business. The hero is a businessman. The villain is a businessman. The love interest is a personal assistant. The motivations rely around economics, money, and stocks. However, as is par for the course with a superhero origin story, Iron Man isn't about the plot, but rather it's about the characters and how they evolve, and on that level, Iron Man succeeds admirably. The interesting thing about the the movie, which makes it different from all previous movie origin stories at the time, is that Tony Stark gained his suit through sheer necessity, as opposed to chance or luck. Peter Parker just happened to get bitten by a spider, Bruce Wayne chose to become a figure of darkness after the death of his parents, the Fantastic Four got into an accident, Johnny Blaze was tricked, and Superman's fate was sealed as a baby. While Tony was held captive by forces beyond his control, he and Yinsen built a crude robot armor just so he could survive and escape, as well as prevent his captors from using the weapons that his company created. In 2008, this was a very unique origin story, and it still kind of is. 7 years later, we've not seen an origin like this on the big screen. And since this origin takes place in the first act, it means that Iron Man is an engaging and unique movie right out of the gates, as opposed to the origin coming into play much later in the runtime like many other superhero films. But a unique premise does not a good movie make. You need a good lead, and thankfully, Iron Man has one of the most compelling leads in recent memory. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark is just a joy to watch. Director Jon Favreau says that he chose to cast Robert Downey Jr. because his own demons and personal problems in his life shared many similarities with Tony Stark. 2008 really was his year in terms of career comebacks, not just for this performance, but his incredible performance as Kirk Lazarus in the Ben Stiller comedy Tropic Thunder.
I know who I am! I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude! What?
People often forget this, but that year Robert Downey Jr. was nominated for an Oscar for Tropic Thunder, but he lost to Heath Ledger's Joker for the supporting actor Oscar. Yeah, now you remember. Now don't get me wrong, Iron Man is a very smart and well assembled action movie, but the lead performances just make this film, and elevate it into something truly special and noteworthy. The movie opens in medias res as Tony is being escorted by soldiers in Afghanistan. In the comics, Tony Stark originally got injured and was held captive in Vietnam, but now that story has been brought forward to this contemporary setting, and it's in this opening that we get to see the laid back, egotistical nature of his character. It's such a brilliant introduction.
Well, you have actually excellent bone structure there. I'm kind of having a hard time not looking at you now. Is that weird? Come on, it's okay, laugh. Hey!
Sir, I have a question to ask.
Yes, please.
Is it true you went 12 for 12 with last year's maximum cover models?
That is an excellent question. Yes and no. March and I had a scheduling conflict, but fortunately the Christmas cover was twins. Anything else? You're kidding me with the hand up, right?
Is it cool if I take a picture with you?
Yes. It's very cool. I don't want to see this on your MySpace page.
Yeah, MySpace. You can tell that this was a 2008 movie. I went to that website the other day and I swear I heard an echo. And while I'm talking about the opening, I might as well touch on the convoy attack, and it's actually pretty tense stuff and it doesn't pull any punches. It's hardly Saving Private Ryan, but it puts you in the heart of the conflict and it is effective. After the attack, the film flashes back to 36 hours earlier and we see what Tony Stark is really like, and one thing is obvious. We want to be him. Seriously, how awesome is this lifestyle? A huge penthouse overlooking the ocean, gorgeous cars, gorgeous women, a personal jet, surrounded by futuristic technology, and enough money to buy the frickin' moon. Incidentally, one of my Patreon milestones is to buy the moon. If you help me achieve that goal, I will purchase the moon, and then I will review it. You want to be Tony Stark and you are envious of his wealth. It's hard not to be captivated by his I'm too cool to care attitude. He's funny, quick-witted and fiercely intelligent.
You've been called the Da Vinci of our time. What do you say to that?
Absolutely ridiculous, I don't paint.
And what do you say to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death?
That's not bad. Let me guess. Berkeley?
Brown, actually.
Well, Ms. Brown, it's an imperfect world, but it's the only one we've got. I guarantee you the day weapons are no longer needed to keep the peace, I'll start making bricks and beams for baby hospitals.
You rehearse that much?
Every night in front of the mirror before bedtime.
I can see that.
I'd like to show you firsthand.
All I want is a serious answer.
Okay, here's serious. My old man had a philosophy. Peace means having a bigger stick than the other guy.
That's a great line coming from the guy selling the sticks.
My father helped defeat the Nazis. He worked on the Manhattan Project. A lot of people, including your professors at Brown, would call that being a hero.
And a lot of people would also call that war profiteering.
Tell me, do you plan to report on the millions we've saved by advancing medical technology or kept from starvation with our IntelliCrops? All those breakthroughs, military funding, honey.
You ever lose an hour's sleep your whole life?
Be prepared to lose a few with you.
Another aspect that elevates the material is Robert Downey Jr.'s chemistry with the rest of the cast. Just with the way they talk to each other, you get the sense that they have a history and long-standing relationships with each other. It's a testament to the actors and Jon Favreau's ability to direct and work with them. Most of the dialogue in this movie feels natural and improvised. And that's because it actually is. Iron Man went into production without a finished script, so the actors would make up most of their exchanges on the fly, and Robert Downey Jr. would always add something new to each take and would also write many of the scripted segments himself, including the Jericho speech.
Is it better to be feared or respected? And I say, is it too much to ask for both? With that in mind, I humbly present the crown jewel of Stark Industries' Freedom Line. It's the first missile system to incorporate our proprietary repulsor technology. They say the best weapon is one you never have to fire. I respectfully disagree. I prefer the weapon you only have to fire once. That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it. And it's worked out pretty well so far. Find an excuse to let one of these off the chain, and I personally guarantee you the bad guys won't even want to come out of their caves. For your consideration, the Jericho.
I would be genuinely interested to see what the finished script looked like and compare it to what was filmed and edited into the final product. This makes it hard for me to give props to the writers because while 4 of them are credited at the end of the movie, I don't know who wrote what and what was improvised, but either way the dialogue in this movie is simply great. Because Tony Stark is such a big personality, it would have been so easy for him to wear out his welcome and become grating, but it's a very smart portrayal by Robert. He and the writers know just when to reel back the character to prevent him from becoming too unlikable or too obnoxious. To be honest, I would choose Tony Stark over Clark Kent as an engaging protagonist any day because he's phenomenally flawed, which makes him a lot more interesting dramatically. He's an asshole, but he's a likeable asshole, if that makes sense. It also helps that Robert is a very capable dramatic actor. His change from self-loving playboy to someone who wants to make the world a better place feels genuine because of his portrayal. His story arc throughout the movie is believable, and it's mainly due to the performance. Huge kudos to Robert for being able to sell such a transition. Despite the title of the movie being Iron Man, this movie isn't about Iron Man, it's about the man inside the suit.
Tony, you know that I would help you with anything, but I cannot help you if you're going to start all of this again.
There is nothing except this. There's no art opening. There is no benefit. There is nothing to sign. There is the next mission and nothing else.
Is that so? Well, then I quit.
You stood by my side all these years while I reaped the benefits of destruction. And now that I'm trying to protect the people that I put in harm's way, you're gonna walk out?
You're going to kill yourself, Tony. I'm not going to be a part of it.
I shouldn't be alive. Unless it was for a reason. I'm not crazy, Pepper. I just finally know what I have to do. And I know in my heart that it's right.
The character's sense of progression during the second act is easily the best portion of the movie as he tries out new technologies, tests out the suit, goes on his first flight. There's a great sense of fun to these proceedings, and while there are some big laughs to be had, it never descends into self-parody.
We're going to start up nice and easy. You're going to see 10% thrust capacity, chief lift. And 3, 2, 1.
It's also during these segments that we learn more about Tony's relationship with his machines, and the way he interacts with them are fun, but charming at the same time.
Day 11, test 37, configuration 2.0. For lack of a better option, dummy is still on fire safety. If you douse me again, and I'm not on fire, I'm donating you to City College. Please don't follow me around with it either, because I feel like I'm gonna catch on fire spontaneously. Just stand down. If something happens, then come in. And again, let's bring it up to 2.5.
His delivery on the jokes are also played straight, which really adds to the comedy factor. It really feels like he's making up these quips on the fly instead of them being scripted.
Hello.
Tony,
Who's this?
it's Rhodes.
Sorry, hello?
I said it's Rhodes.
Speak up, please.
When the hell is that noise?
Oh yeah, I'm driving the top down.
Yeah, well, I need your help right now.
It's funny how that works, huh?
Yeah, speaking of funny, we've got a weapons depot that was just blown up a few clicks from where you were being held captive.
Well, that's a hot spot. Sounds like someone stepped in and did your job for you.
Why do you sound out of breath, Tony?
I'm not. I was just jogging in the
I
canyon.
thought you were driving.
Right, I was driving to the canyon where I'm gonna jog.
You sure you don't have any tech in that area I should know about?
Nope. Bogey spotted!
Whiplash, come in hot.
Okay, good, because I'm staring at one right now and it's about to be blown to Kingdom Come.
That's my exit.
As for the supporting cast, there's Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, Tony's personal assistant. When compared to other comic book movie love interests, she initially doesn't do an awful lot to stand out, but as the movie progresses, she becomes more and more interesting. She's unique in that she isn't just a friend to the titular character, but she's also an employee. In a way, her and Tony are forced to be best friends, because they don't really have anybody else, and that's a relationship I find very interesting, as opposed to having somebody pine for their love interest's affection for 3 movies like Peter Parker. She also discovers Tony's alter ego quite early on in the movie, which is surprising because in comparison to most, though not all superhero movies, the love interest either never finds out the secret identity or discovers it in the sequel. I give props to the filmmakers for not playing all of their cards too early, as Tony and Pepper aren't even a proper couple by the end of the movie, at least not in the conventional sense. Paltrow settles into the role very naturally and sells the by-the-book assistant role very nicely, while also throwing in a little bit of self-confidence.
I've got your clothes here. They've been dry cleaned and pressed, and there's a car waiting for you outside that will take you anywhere you'd like to go.
You must be the famous Pepper Potts.
Indeed I am.
After all these years, Tony still has you picking up the dry cleaning.
I do anything and everything that Mr. Stark requires, including occasionally taking out the trash. Will that be all?
Her on-screen relationship with Robert Downey Jr. is so enjoyable to watch as she plays the grounded role to his eccentric personality. As for the other friendly supporting characters, there's Colonel James Rhodes, played by Terrence Howard. He's essentially the closest thing Tony has to an actual friend in this movie adaptation, and Tony and Terrence work so well together that you get the sense that these two have a history and that they hold a great amount of respect for one another, despite not blatantly saying it. There's a sense of camaraderie, and the ad-libbing of the actors helps to get that across. But of course, with the yin must come the yang. With a great hero, you need a great villain, and thankfully, Iron Man does have one in the form of Obadiah Stane, played by Jeff Bridges. I have a weird set of feelings about Jeff Bridges in this movie. When I first saw it, I really loved him in it, but then a few months later, I saw The Dark Knight and I forgot all about him after Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Clown Prince of Crime. I mean, no matter what happens, you're going to look bad when compared to Heath Ledger's Joker. Then when I bought Iron Man on DVD and found The Dark Knight under the Christmas tree that year, thanks to my brother, thank you very much, I saw them both in quick succession and I really wasn't a fan of Obadiah. But after distancing myself from both movies and rewatching Iron Man for the purposes of this review, I can really appreciate the character. Even though Iron Man and The Dark Knight came out in the same year and even in the same season, I won't even begin comparing Heath Ledger's Joker with Jeff Bridges' Obadiah Stane. They are trying to do 2 completely different things, but what makes Obadiah work is the context of the film he is in. He is quite fleshed out as a character, and I'm very surprised that Bridges was able to balance the 2 main elements that make him work. In the first half of the movie, he has to be a long-standing business partner trying to help Tony and to be a friend and maybe even a father figure, but then in the second half he's trying to kill him with an enhanced version of the Iron Man suit to take control of its company. Boy, that escalated quickly. Not many actors can make that work, but Bridges does it, and he does it well. When I first saw the movie, I knew very little about the Iron Man comic books, the character, or his rogues gallery, so Obadiah's turn to villainy was actually a legitimate surprise for me when I first saw it. It's mainly because Jeff Bridges feels like an authentic, warm, but stern father figure to Tony when he comes back home, but there is the occasional flash of an ulterior motive that helps make the twist feel organic and not come completely out of nowhere.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave! With a box of scraps!
I find the supportive Obadiah more interesting than the evil one in the second half, especially since he spends a lot of his time gloating at Tony instead of, getting the job done. Not to mention, when he does become the Ironmonger at the end, it's a bit of an anticlimax because the fight between him and Tony is pretty short, but I'll touch upon that later when I talk about the action. The rest of the supporting cast are a bit mixed. Agent Coulson, played by Clark Gregg, gives a strangely compelling, minimalist performance, and Sean Toob gives heart to Yinsen, and you do feel sad when he unfortunately dies. Ferran Tahir plays Raza, the leader of the Ten Rings, and he leaves no impression, at all. Seriously, I wanted to write something in depth about the other villain in this movie, but I just couldn't. So yeah, for the most part, we have some really good characters, and I do love how Iron Man isn't about the suit, it's about the man inside the suit. But that does not stop the suit from being all kinds of awesome, as well as this awesome slipcase DVD. The special effects in Iron Man were done by Industrial Light and Magic, who the year before did the CGI for the first Michael Bay Transformers movie, so you can see why they were brought on board to bring the technology in Tony Stark's world to life. The emphasis on metallic and intricate machinery is something the company clearly specialises in, and the same strengths from their work on Transformers applies here. All the machinery feels like it has weight to it, you get the impression that there's a real force and mass interacting with everything on screen, even though most of it was done on a computer. There's a huge amount of detail and moving parts, including a great use of motion capture. The film definitely deserved its Academy Award nomination for visual effects, and it's not just the huge stuff that looks impressive, but the tiny details like how Pepper was able to put her hands in Tony Stark's chest, and there's also Tony Stark's wonderfully detailed heads-up display inside his Iron Man suit. Seriously, there's a reason pretty much every other Iron Man movie has recycled this effect. But the Iron Man suits themselves look amazing. The suit looks like it came straight out of a comic book panel, and there isn't a single moment where Tony Stark in the suit does not look like a badass. Pure awesome. The suit really is a great design, and by the end of the movie, you really want to own one. The visual effects for the metal suits and everything else involving them look brilliant and seamless, and as opposed to huge spectacular vistas, there's more of a focus on making them fit into the film. The effects are there to enhance the film rather than just be blind spectacle. There's also no rapid fire editing during the action sequences thanks to the pulled back camera, so the audience can look back and admire the scope, the effects and the camera work, but it's obvious that the action takes a backseat in terms of focus. There are 3 action set pieces, they're all short but they're very sweet, though I did find the finale to be a bit disappointing because it's not really a full-on fight. Tony Stark is using his old, outdated arc reactor, so his suit isn't nearly at full capacity. I know that him working with limited resources helps to ratchet up the tension for the climax, but sometimes you just want to see 2 suits of armour battle it out at full strength, at least for a bit, because when it comes right down to it, sometimes you just want to see 2 fully realised foes going head to head at full strength. The sound design is just as impressive as the effects, and once again was very deserving of its Academy Award nomination for sound editing. The machinery sounds great, the clanging of metal sounds genuine, and the sound punctuates the visuals and makes it feel more tangible. The score by the criminally underrated Ramin Djawadi is also brilliant. The orchestrations mainly consist of bass and strings with a spattering of metallic sound effects to get across an industrial feel, along with some downright metal motifs thrown in for good measure. It's a very appropriate soundtrack that not only sets the mood, but it also feels justified for the character. Tony Stark likes rock and metal music as he's often heard listening to it throughout the movie, so the score becomes an extension of his personality. Also, the use of Black Sabbath over the credits? Perfect. So, after all of that, here's my conclusion. Iron Man is a very unique superhero movie, or at least it was in 2008. While most movies of this genre have a saint as the main character, we are left with a flawed, intriguing anti-hero. The villain does an unexpected but well executed 180, the characters are likeable, it's a blast from start to finish, and it just makes for a great watch. I have a lot of fun watching Iron Man. The writing is witty, the technical aspects of the film are brilliant, it's a lot of fun and exactly what you would want out of a summer blockbuster and then some. But it's not just a mindless action movie, as the action, while impressive albeit brief, takes a backseat to breaking down Tony Stark as a character and following his change into fixing his legacy and trying to do the right thing in the face of overwhelming personal opposition. The third act is a bit slow and I found the final battle to be a bit of an anticlimax, but there's a hell of a lot to enjoy about the film. Even the very ending flips superhero conventions on their head, as Tony Stark reveals to the world his secret identity to become a potential superhero celebrity.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly, with this laundry list of character defects, all the mistakes I made, largely public. Yeah, okay, yeah. The truth is, I am Iron Man.
He said it! It's fun, fresh, and its foundations are ironclad. I give Iron Man 4.5 stars out of 5. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about Iron Man. So, next time I will be reviewing...
Jarvis.
Welcome, Holmes.
I am Iron Man. You think you're the only superhero in the world? Mr. Stark, you become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
Who the hell are you?
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh.
I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
Holy shit, even in 2008 when I knew nothing about comic books, I knew just how awesome this was when I first saw the movie. That is Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson. From Marvel cartoons growing up, I remember Nick Fury looking a lot like this. However, in 2001, Marvel Comics asked Samuel L. Jackson if they could use his likeness for an alternative version of Nick Fury for their Ultimate Universe, so the casting could not be any more perfect. With this teaser, Marvel Studios let it be known that they were on their way to a team-up style crossover epic in the form of an Avengers movie. But if that's the case, then what else could be in this movie? What other Easter eggs are there to be found? What have I missed? Okay, there's Captain America's shield in the background of this shot, and that's about it. Huh. Oh, but Stan Lee makes a cameo in this film. You know, as he does. Okay, so maybe there's not a lot to analyse in terms of Avengers Easter eggs in Iron Man, but I'm sure there will be next time. Speaking of which, join me next time on the Avengers Marathon for my review of The Incredible Hulk. Spoiler warning, it's pretty amazing. Or should I say, incredible. I did a funny... Hello ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for watching this lengthy analysis of Iron Man and part 1 of my Avengers Marathon. If you want to keep updated on when future installments are released, then please make sure to subscribe. And while you're being awesome, please like this video and share it around because it really helps me out. And don't forget to visit my movie review website, www.trilbee.com, where I take a look at all of the latest film releases. Also, on the screen right now, you should see a list of my patrons who made this video possible. If you want to see your name at the end of the credits of these videos, as well as gain access to the review script and exclusive content, as well as getting featured in these videos, then please consider supporting me through Patreon. Speaking of which, Zachary Taylor says of Iron Man, "It's been a long while since I've seen the first Iron Man movie, but I remember it being awesome and that's all that matters." A blunt but nonetheless accurate statement, Zachary. While rewatching Iron Man for the purposes of this review, I forgot just how great the film is. If you haven't rewatched it recently, do that, it really holds up, it honestly does. But anyway, you folks watching can also have your say on the movies that I'll be reviewing, so once again, Patreon is the place to be. That moon isn't going to review itself.
Next time, baby.
Or maybe not. This is kind of awkward.